Stars are right, and that means it's time for another episode of The Whisper in Darkness. I'm your host, the manfromleng. Thank you very much for joining me today. On this episode, the great old ones at Fantasy Flight Games were kind enough to send me a spoiler for the Search for Kadath, the first Mythos pack in the Dream Eater cycle. Obviously, there are spoilers throughout if you care about that sort of thing. If you enjoy what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Before I continue, I'd like to thank the patrons who keep the lights on here on the Plateau of Leng. These people have gone above and beyond to bring you the content I create for the Arkham Horror LCG. If you'd like to become a patron to support the channel's goals and enjoy patron-only content, follow the link below, sign up for the tier of your choice, and claim your rewards. That would be awesome. Without further ado, let's get started. This month's spoiler is Read the Signs. It's a 2-cost Mystic event with willpower and intellect skill icons and the spell trait. It has the following game text: Investigate. Add your willpower skill value to your skill value for this investigation. You may ignore any effect or keyword on your location which would trigger during this investigation. If you succeed, discover one additional clue at this location. Mystics don't have that many options in their card pool that help them discover clues. In fact, you can count all of them on one hand and still have a couple fingers to spare. Drawn to the Flame has been an auto-include in Mystic and off-class Mystic decks since the core set. Discovering 2 clues at a location for free, regardless of that location's shroud value, without making a skill test is an incredible ability. Sure, you do have to draw an encounter card if you want those clues, but that's a trade most players are willing to make in a heartbeat. Drawn to the Flame is the only event in the Mystic card pool that helps them discover clues. The other 2 cards, Sixth Sense and Rite of Seeking, are both assets. Both are on the pricey side at 3 and 4 resources respectively. Both let a Mystic or off-class Mystic investigate with their best skill, that being willpower. Sixth Sense will grab you only 1 clue at a time, but it doesn't use charges or have any drawbacks. Rite of Seeking enters play with 3 charges and lets you discover an additional clue if you succeed, but pulling a special token during the skill test will immediately end your turn, which is no bueno. Read the Signs offers a different take on the investigate action. For 2 resources, a Mystic or off-class Mystic gets to add their willpower, which is usually 4 or 5, to their intellect, which is typically 2 or 3. If the skill test is successful, you get to discover an additional clue, which is always a big plus, especially in multiplayer. As an added bonus, Read the Signs lets you ignore any effect or keyword on your location that would trigger during this investigation. Fresh off the Circle Undone cycle, the effect that immediately comes to mind is the bane of investigators everywhere, Haunted. Haunted can make investigating a location a very dicey proposition unless you're confident that you can succeed, but it's not the only trigger out there that can sour you on taking investigate actions. Several of the Witch-Haunted Woods locations in the Circle Undone, including the Cairnstones and Child's Treehouse, have forced effects that can ruin your day if you successfully investigate them. Read the Signs slams the door on that sort of BS without any trouble. Read the Signs is an event which makes it a very attractive option for Luke Robinson, who could play it as though he were at a connecting location from the safety of his Dreamgate, or SEFINA Rousseau, who may place it beneath her Investigator card at the start of the game so she may copy it with the Painted World. Read the Signs also has the spell trait, so it synergizes with cards such as Marie Lambeau, who gets an additional action to play it, either level of Arcane Initiate and Uncage the Soul. Once you gain a few extra experience points, you can stack Read the Signs on Diana Esperance or play it from your discard pile for 1 resource using De Vermis Mysteris. Cards that help investigators discover multiple clues typically see a lot of play because you can't beat a scenario without discovering clues. Read the Signs is quite similar to Drawn to the Flame, and there are pros and cons to playing either card. Drawn to the Flame is free and it will grab you 2 clues without having to pull from the Chaos Bag. That's huge, especially if you prefer playing on hard or expert difficulty where the Chaos Bag can be extremely tough. The big drawback here is that you've got to draw an encounter card, but that's a risk I'm often willing to take if I have no other way of discovering clues efficiently at a high shroud location. Besides, Mystics have some of the best counters to the encounter deck, including above average willpower, which is commonly featured on treachery cards, cards that can rig the encounter deck in their favor, and cards that can cancel or mitigate the effects of encounter cards. Read the Signs will grab you 2 clues, but you've got to spend 2 resources and you need to pull from the Chaos Bag, which does mean there is always a chance that the action will fail regardless of your skill value. Depending on the scenario and the effects of the special tokens, drawing from the Chaos Bag can be a risky proposition too. Read the Signs will protect you from the Haunted keyword and other forced effects that may trigger during an investigate action, but that particular bit of game text isn't going to matter most of the time because vanilla locations far outnumber those with relevant triggers. Ultimately, Read the Signs costs you a card, an action, and 2 resources. I'd be willing to pay that for 2 clues. I'm not convinced that it's worth it for only 1. Personally, I think Drawn to the Flame still has a slight edge over Read the Signs, at least in solo play, but I'll admit it's awfully close. If you're fairly confident that you'll be swimming in resources and you know you'll discover 2 clues, Read the Signs starts to look very tempting indeed. That brings me to one reservation that I have about Read the Signs, and that being its resource cost. There is very little Mystics can't accomplish with their above-average willpower. However, they have a well-deserved reputation for being slow off the mark because playing the assets that let them leverage that impressive willpower takes time and resources, both of which are often in short supply. I'm not convinced Read the Signs is going to make Mystics any faster, at least the traditional asset-based Mystic decks that players are accustomed to playing. In fact, Read the Signs may exacerbate the setup issues experienced by the class because it's on the pricey side for a Mystic event, and Mystics don't have that many ways to generate additional resources at level 0 besides good old emergency cash. Forbidden Knowledge will tag you for a horror each time you take a resource, while David Renfield requires you to have Doom in play, which some players are loath to do. The obvious exception here is SEFINA Rousseau, who has access to all the cards in the Rogue card pool that generate extra resources. Read the Signs will give an asset-based Mystic decks a leg up in the short term, allowing them to investigate without the time-consuming setup required by either Sixth Sense or Rite of Seeking. However, it is a one-shot event, and I think you've got to ask yourself whether you would have been better off in the long run investing those 2 resources in either Sixth Sense or Rite of Seeking. After all, a single copy of Rite of Seeking has the potential to discover more clues than 2 copies of Read the Signs. I don't see Read the Signs replacing Drawn to the Flame in traditional asset-based Mystic decks due to its resource cost, but it may open the door to decks that rely on events to discover the majority of their clues. SEFINA Rousseau, for example, could use the Painted World to duplicate Drawn to the Flame, Read the Signs, Eavesdrop, and Intel Report to discover clues while making as few skill tests as possible. SEFINA certainly has the potential to generate the resources required to play these types of events repeatedly, and once she gains a few experience points, she can use Lola Santiago to discover even more clues without making skill tests. Luke Robinson also has a preference for events. Between Drawn to the Flame, Read the Signs, and Working a Hunch, he could discover quite a few clues while making very few skill tests. Connect the Dots is likely too expensive for Luke to play with any consistency, but you might be able to make it work if you're able to get David Renfield up and running. Once Luke earns some experience, he could pick up Diana Esperance or Divermus Mysterious to play and or replay those events multiple times. I'm not entirely certain there are enough events to make this sort of clue strategy viable, but I think it is an idea worth exploring. That's going to do it for my first look at Read the Signs. A big thank you to Fantasy Flight Games for sending the spoiler my way. Discovering clues quickly and efficiently is the name of the game in the Arkham Horror LCG, and Read the Signs is another tool that will help Mystics crack those high shroud locations. Personally, I'm not crazy about the idea of spending a card, an action, and 2 resources for 1 clue unless I'm extremely desperate, but 2 resources for 2 clues seems like a perfectly reasonable exchange. I like the fact that Read the Signs puts the kibosh on the Haunted keyword and other drawbacks that trigger during investigate actions. Unfortunately, it's not going to be relevant all that often. That said, Read the Signs does have the spell trait, which does give it certain advantages over Drawn to the Flame. Arcane Initiates can draw into it, while Marie Lambeau can take an additional action to play it if there is a Doom on a card she controls. You can't say the same for Drawn to the Flame. I'm a little wary of playing Read the Signs in an asset-based Mystic build due to its cost, especially when Drawn to the Flame does essentially the same thing for free. However, Read the Signs does open up some exciting possibilities for event-based builds that can discover clues while making as few skill tests as possible. I'm really looking forward to seeing what players do with this card once they get their hands on it in a few short weeks. That's going to do it for this episode. If you enjoy what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. If you'd like to become a patron, head over to patreon.com and sign up for a tier of your choice. If you need to contact me, I can be reached at manfromleng@gmail.com. I'm also on Twitter at manfromleng. Until the stars are right, keep your shotgun close and your elder sign closer. Take care out there, and happy investigating.